I love it when it works out this way. It's exactly 6 o'clock. I'm live on my end. We're ready to go whenever you are.
Great. Good evening and welcome to the January 18th, 2023 Henrietta Town Board meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranek,
Here.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Here.
Councilmember Page,
Here.
Councilmember Blanca,
Here.
Supervisor Schultz.
Here. We'll begin the night with a silent prayer followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I'd like to make a motion to approve the preceding minutes of the preceding meetings. The December 28th, 2022 regular meeting and the January 3rd, 2023 organizational meeting. Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. We're going to start with one of our resolutions prior to the public hearings. Lisa?
And I'm going to apologize upfront if I mispronounced your name. Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 2-49, 2023. Whereas the Seeing Henrietta Through Your Eyes contest received a number of creative, thoughtful, and thought-provoking submissions. And whereas the contest committee carefully considered each submission to identify images that met the contest criteria and reflected a variety of perspectives on Henrietta. And whereas the committee selected 12 winning entries from 5 local artists that will be displayed as the banner photo on the town website, one each month, every month in 2023. Therefore, be it resolved that the Henrietta Town Board thanks everyone who submitted art for the contest and congratulates the 5 winning artists: David, Balvo, Amanda, Lay, Barbara, Barge, Ryhan, Mirage, and Michelle Shim.
Second.
So thank you very much to everybody who contributed artwork. This is something that our clerks in the library and others have started to kind of spotlight some resident artists, and I think it's a really nice touch, and we've gotten some great submissions. This is, I think, the second year doing this.
Second year.
Yep.
Yeah.
So other comments?
No, it's just amazing. We've got more this year than we did last year. We were really excited to see some things that were a little bit different. The committee really enjoys looking at all of these, and it's just a great way to showcase the talent that we have in the town. So I thank everybody that submitted.
I'm one of the submitters. Thank you very much for the recognition. Just want to be aware that I used to travel a lot, go many, many places. My name is Dave Valvo. And most of the photographs that I submitted were taken from my kitchen window in Henrietta
Wow.
that you selected.
You take beautiful
Beautiful.
photos.
Thank you.
You
very
really
much.
do. You take really lovely photos.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other comments that anyone wishes to make? We are going to present,
Don't
don't
leave.
leave yet. We've got some
We've got
certificates to present to you,
resolutions
but
for you.
we have to pass the resolution first.
Is it true that they're going to have a picture on our website every month, is it?
Yeah, so it's the banner page and it scrolls through basically each month they change it out.
Right.
So,
And you won't know whose photo is up until that new month, and then you can see whose photo we chose. We tried to choose the photos to kind of fit the month. That's what we tried to do. So.
all right.
Okay.
Hearing no further comments, please call the roll. Oh, there's an example, if you just saw it.
With the facts.
I'm sorry, juggling too many buttons. I'm
problem.
trying to keep up. Okay, Councilmember Sopranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. So we'd like to
Do
present,
you wanna, what do you wanna call
how
now?
many artists are in the,
There's 5.
are they all five here?
There's
All right.
Three.
Wanna have
Three.
everybody come up, or-
Yeah, why don't you come on up?
Should we have Adrian come up too?
Yes,
since
I
Adrian
think
was
so.
involved? We'll bring him down to you.
Adrian's-
Steve, you want to come and get a photo taken with him? So we have, oh, I'm sorry.
Why ruin the picture with Gene?
Well, because you're the supervisor and
Yeah.
people like to be, they like to be with the big cheese.
Definitely got the cheese coming.
I'm just trying to see.
Who's this, who's?
Oh, they're just all the same, just, okay.
Oh, okay.
They're one
Sure.
resolution.
One resolution. Okay.
So.
Great, wonderfully. Thank you.
And we're doing it again next year, so start taking your photos, do your artwork, whatever about the town.
Okay. The first public hearing is for the special use permit application number 2022-050 Curry House of India, 3047 West Henrietta Road, to modify the previously approved special use permit application number 2018-001 to operate a dine-in and takeout restaurant, but to now also allow alcohol to be sold and to have occasional live music. Do we have a representative? Please come on up and introduce yourself and tell us your relationship to the application.
My name is Prakash Mokhtan, and it was previously a restaurant, and we are running the same restaurant, and we just want to add the alcohol.
Are you the operator of the restaurant?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. For the live music, is that indoors, I assume?
Yes, indoor.
Not that, I mean, in this location, there really aren't any houses anywhere nearby that I'm aware of. Are you?
You mean like, do we have the same live music around, like nearby the restaurant? No.
Right. No, I'm just saying, I don't think, in other words, the reason we have that as a checkbox on the special use permit for restaurants is in the event some of these restaurants are near people's houses. And so live music would be a problem, but I'm not,
No.
the closest houses that I'm aware of are north of the railroad tracks. And at that point, the railroad tracks are elevated, so it would make a phenomenal sound barrier. So I don't see any issue with the live music. I don't know if anyone else sees any issue with that. And I assume, have you applied to the alcohol board yet, or?
Not
you're
yet.
Going to, okay.
Correct.
I don't have any further questions. I'm familiar with your restaurant and I think this is a fine addition to it. Anyone else?
No.
Is there anyone in the public who would like to comment on this? Okay, hearing none, then I'm going to close the special use close the public hearing for the special use permit application number 2022-050. Anyone like to put forth a motion?
Thank you.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to approve special use permit number 2022-050 Curry House of India Incorporated, 3047 West Henrietta Road, to modify the previously approved special use permit application number 218-001 to operate a dine-in and takeout restaurant, to now also allow alcohol to be sold and to have occasional live music.
Second.
Any further comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Congratulations. You'll get a notice about the approval of this resolution, especially if you've sent by email. You'll get it as a document through email.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have special use permit application number 2022-051, East Henrietta Apartments by AR Building Company, 2160 East Henrietta Road, to construct 2 4-story apartment buildings for a total of 102 units. Could you please introduce yourself and your relationship to the
Yeah.
project?
Hi, my name is Jason Kambitsis. I'm the president of AR Development Company. I am the applicant. We are the applicant. We normally have a presentation. Do we just go over what we want to do tonight? Or I don't know if it's been on the drive, but what we're proposing to do at 2160 East Henrietta Road is 2 4-story 51 unit apartment buildings. What we're applying for is a special use permit to allow multifamily, which isn't allowed use under the special permit, and then also change the density from the existing 12 units per acre to 14.6 units per acre. As you can see there, we are proposing to put 1 51 unit building on East Henrietta Road. And when you come into the property, you'll see our clubhouse, which has gym, leasing facility, and a pool, and then a corresponding 51 unit building on the backside there. Just a little background on who we are so everybody understands that. AR Building is a multifamily development company located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We were founded by the owner that we have today in 1968. He has no partners, no investors. It's all of his own property. All this stuff is built for his own portfolio. I work for the man who owns the company. 9,000 units in 10 states. Over the course of the company, we've sold maybe 400 units. So we build these things to hold. We don't sell them. Not only do we build them ourselves, we manage them ourselves. So our company will actually construct the building, and then also on-site management is done by AR Building Company. We have an on-site manager, maybe a leasing agent, maintenance, and then all the oversight goes back to our headquarters in Pittsburgh. What we like to build with these 4-story buildings is we use brick on the facades, vinyl on the upper floors. We use Trex decking on the decks, AZAC panels on the outside for the trim work. All the interior units have granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, and in-unit laundry. The benefit for us doing this building here, the 4-story building, is really the benefit for the community. Demographically, we run the gamut of people who don't want to move into a house ever, people who want to move out of their house. Since these are 1 and 2 bedroom units, we really get very, very rarely are there families in it. It's mostly just single people and couples, just due to the nature of the units and what we provide. We don't do playgrounds or anything like that. So really, this is really a community that's designed for people who, young professionals and empty nesters. That's who we get everywhere. And we can prove that through the demographics we have in all the other communities. Again, we're here to answer any questions. Like to have an open discourse, and happy to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. A couple quick questions. Do you have any other projects already in Monroe County?
We do not. This is our first project. We're working on another one in Canandaigua. And that's the closest project, and another one in New Hartford, New York.
And there's a reason you needed to exceed the density?
The reason to exceed it was in order to build this building and to make a project that works. Anything below this just doesn't work for us. We wanted to make a project that really is beneficial to the community of having that, not having something that's maybe 80 units. And so that's why we're pushing to do this. It's what makes sense for us on the site. The density is a little low compared to what we do in other places. And so that's why we were kind of doing this. Realistically, this is a kind of a more standard practice of what we do and what we see in other communities. Normally, you could actually put a 3rd building on this if you really wanted to push it. And that's what we originally looked at. But we really didn't want to push the density. We really didn't want to push, having something too much in the community, something that was, not really in scale with the rest of the buildings around it. So we actually came back from 3 buildings to 2.
Other questions?
So when you talk about on-site management, we're talking 24/7 management?
We have on the operating hours, we have that, and then on-call 24-hour management in case somebody, we had those issues. I don't know how it worked up here. I know there was big storms around Christmas. We had a bunch of units. You can't deal with it 20 below, pipes burst, stuff like that. So we were able to deal with everything immediately. We have on-site people that'll come in 24 hours a day. Our maintenance guys are in at 2:00 in the morning dealing with whatever happens. So yeah, they're not there, they don't live there, but they're in close proximity.
Thank you.
These are market rate.
They're market rate apartments. Yep.
And if I recall the previous, it looks like you reoriented the buildings. Becky, I don't know if you could bring up the drawing, but it looks like you reoriented the buildings following the neighborhood meeting. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
So when we had our neighborhood meeting, either it was in beginning of January, end of November, we talked about pushing it away from the houses. So if you're looking on the right side of that plan, there's houses to that side. We pushed the buildings away from that. And if you look to the top of the plan, that's a commercial property. That's the florist.
Right.
And so we're backing the building up against that and the other building up against the road and keeping away from the houses. We're a few hundred feet away from the closest house to the backside. Other things that popped up were fencing and things like that to kind of make sure that people aren't going from one property to the other. We're happy to do that. But, again, the conversations we had pushed us into that way. And also it gives us the ability to create a green barrier there. Trees that are dead, we'll take out. Trees that are in good shape, we're not going to take down. We have no interest in going in and clear cutting the site. We want to keep that barrier. I know people like the barrier. Animals live there, all those kind of things. And so it's beneficial for us as well. We like to have that wooded environment.
Yeah, I like this layout a lot better because, again, one of the issues when you put an apartment building next to houses, especially if you've got balconies or places
Yeah.
where people can look out, they're essentially then looking down into people's backyards. So with this orientation, doesn't look like that's happening at
No,
all.
we're not doing that. No,
Yeah.
absolutely not.
There's no requirement for a retention pond.
This stuff is either going into the existing or we have underground storm sewer system. So what happens is we capture it and then it goes underground. Our engineer Brad's right here and he can actually answer any questions relating to that. You want to answer that?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Brad Simmons with CEC. So in regards to the stormwater, it will be managed in some sort, either a retention pond or underground. And we'll meet all the standards through the ordinance. I believe there's a 20% release rate that we have to match. We'll make sure that we have that. Overall, at this moment, we're working through those details. And our preliminary attempts are showing that it's not going to be an issue to manage.
Okay. Traditionally, with the hill slope, it causes some flooding and some water issues, drainage issues for the people on the bottom. So that was one of the questions that I wanted to have answered.
I know that was a question that came up at our community meeting. And it's something where we listened to that. Of course, we don't have it laid out there, but we will have that. And it's the obligation at this point for a new development to actually retain more water than previously was discharged. So really, we're looking at it as a benefit in that sense that we'll be capturing the water that's on the site there. Right now, it pools up, it goes wherever. And I could see that as being a major issue for the people that live behind to deal with that discharge. We'll be
Yeah,
capturing that.
I especially see it as potentially, we'll have to have a good system for collecting the water.
Yep.
Off of the parking lots. I mean,
Yep.
obviously the roofs are gonna have gutters and stuff and can go right into the storm system, but
Yep.
you've got those two, especially the one parking lot that looks like it's gonna have a slight slope downhill. That's a lot of potential runoff heading in that direction that
Yeah.
you'll want to corral and get into stormwater prevention.
Yeah, we have about 50 communities right now. We have no stormwater issues. We take it seriously. In the sense that we don't want to be a bad neighbor. We don't want people calling
Right.
and saying, look, we're going into your house here. That's not something we want to do.
If you talk with some of the builders in the area, you'll know Henrietta. We have a couple people who take the stormwater very seriously
should.
from this site, and they pretty strict on enforcement, including during construction.
Yep.
With regards to silt fences and
Mhm.
avoiding blowouts. So
Yeah, again, when we go into these projects, it's funny, we tour other projects. I don't know if people have a way of getting away with it in a way that we don't, but we go into stuff and we want to make sure that, we don't want to get fined. We don't want to be in a situation where there's a problem. We just like to come and build our buildings and be done with it. So we don't like to cut corners. We don't like to go the cheap on anything. We just want to make the best building we can. So
What are the widths of your driveways?
Brad can answer that. I don't know what they
Okay,
are.
thank you.
I mean, the parking spots are usually 18 feet wide, but the drive aisles, I'll have Brad answer that.
I'm more concerned about our largest fire apparatus being able to turn. There's a lot of turns in that complex, and I just want to make sure that our ladder truck.
Yeah, absolutely. So the main drive through the development is 24 feet wide. I believe that we also have a secondary access for emergency purposes only.
so that will be gated. That was going to be my question.
Correct,
Yeah.
yes. And we have worked or have been in contact with the fire marshal and have had a couple back and forth. And we've proved that our design allows their truck to turn throughout the entire development. Yeah, so we've already initiated conversations with the fire marshal to vet all that information out.
Are there going to be private hydrants within the?
Yeah, at this point, it looks like we're gonna need one hydrant as there's two located at the very front
Right.
along East Henrietta,
Yeah, I was assuming there needs to be one.
kind of around
towards-
that clubhouse.
Towards the back of building 2 or
Yeah.
behind the clubhouse. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
there's that, where the two lots meet, there's sort of that cutout area that might make a good location for it.
Yep.
I assume you've been discussing with the New York State DOT with regards to the entrance?
Correct, yeah. So we've submitted the perm 33, the first stage of that. And then once we are a little bit closer to the site plan submission, we'll proceed further with the second stage.
Great. So I've asked a bunch of questions previously, so I know a number of the answers. The only other thing I see is, I believe there's sidewalk along East Henrietta Road here. I would like to see your internal sidewalk connecting to that.
Okay.
So obviously the one along your main drive there.
Is that one connection point suffice?
As far as I'm concerned, yeah, it's, like I said, if you want to come up back the other side, that's okay too. But to be honest, I think what most people will do is walk down the gated path if they don't want to have to go around. Since it's a gated path and there's no conflicting vehicles, I don't see that as a danger point. But like I said, I would like to see the one for the main entrance. I'm just making sure that there really are, pretty sure there are sidewalks there, but
I think there is, if I remember correctly.
yeah, I can see them. They're right along the road, but they're there. Okay. Any other questions from the town board? Okay, what I might suggest is for you guys to sit at this table where the microphone is, and that way, if we need you to respond to questions from the community, we can ask you to do so. I'll note that people, please, direct your questions to me. You can obviously ask something about the thing, and if we need them to answer, we'll ask them to answer, but, so who would first like to speak on this subject? Come on up. Yep. First gentleman who raises his hand.
Please introduce your name and your address, please.
Right.
Hi,
Just whether you're a resident of town is good enough. You don't have to give out your street address.
my name's Jared. My wife back here is Dawn. We are the owners of the property next door, 2132 East Henrietta Road. We own the florist and the property along the north side of the property. We are opposing the project. It's too dense on the grounds that we believe that the density is too thick. There's not enough parking. And I feel that with this project going on is actually going to devalue our property values. Just because our property is going to turn into a buffer zone is what I feel. We're not given the same buffer zone as the rest of the residents around in the area. I'm just now seeing this one site plan of the new driveway, which is going to be very close to our driveway. I can just see that being more of a problem than a benefit for us. We're kind of be stuck in the middle between Easton Circle and this new development.
So in terms of a buffer, just to be clear, there didn't used to be any buffering. The
It's been
first
forever
town board I
wild
was
as long
with,
as we've owned the property. Yes.
what's that?
It's been kind of like forever wild as long as we've
Well,
ever.
It's never been forever wild. Someone just hasn't developed it. So, but in terms of, there didn't used to be buffering until an earlier town board. Mr. Page was, I think, the only one here who was on that early town board when we put that in as part of our comprehensive land use plan. And the idea that has to do with the proposed use and the existing use and the amount of, I'll call it potential impact. There's more impact on something like this moving next door to single family residences than there are next to commercial properties. And I mean, you've got a commercial property immediately to your north. That's less distance away than the buffer.
Correct.
So again, there is a 50-foot buffer required. As far as that entrance near you, that's the gated one. So there would not be cars coming in and out of there.
That's a gated. Okay. Well, the site plan has changed a lot since we've seen it, but I'm just
That was,
voicing.
right. That was in response to, we had held a community meeting for neighbors to come and,
Right.
and give feedback.
Which I
So,
was there,
yeah,
yes. So I'm just here to voice my opinion as a property owner that owns property
Sure.
along one whole side of this complex. So it's speak now or forever hold my peace.
Is that your brush and scrap pile that kind of comes across onto their property, or?
No, that was there when they cleared. I don't know what happened over there a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
but
there was
that-
another project, as I understand it. Someone had proposed a project here years ago and it never went through.
Yeah.
I don't know that it was necessarily denied, or as much as they just didn't do it.
We didn't know what was going on over
Yeah,
there
I-
either, but yes, no,
Before
that
I
was
was in
all
office. Okay,
got pushed back from them. So
okay.
thank you.
Yep, thank you. Next. Come on up. Yep, you.
I just have a few questions for these gentlemen and for you.
So again, please state your name and whether you're a Henrietta resident or
I am.
neighbor.
My name is Barbara Granger and I live right behind.
Okay,
And I'd like to know, is any of this going to be subsidized housing?
could you do me a favor and talking to them?
Oh, yes, I will.
Address with us.
Sorry.
No problem.
Is any of this going to be subsidized housing?
Go ahead.
No,
Thank you. The other thing is, have we taken into consideration, and I'm sure you do, what's the impact on our school systems? What's the impact on our infrastructure? Really, this is not, to me, a small unit. We've lived in our home for 55 years. And we have always had drainage problems. We've probably put in more drainage tile than anybody could think of. And I'm very worried about the water running down that hill into our property because it's like a river when it rains. And when Hollybrook Road was refinished and it added another layer, it even got worse and we had to do more drainage. So we spent a lot of money on drainage. And that's a real concern of my husband and myself. And also,
Want me to address that and before you go on?
yeah, I'd like you to.
So that gets back to why, he mentioned the requirement the town has that they actually reduce the amount of runoff that is coming from the property today. So that water that currently is just sheeting down and into your property, they're going to have to capture that. So you see on the plan, there was this, dashed and dotted line, that's sort of the limits of disturbance. Anything within there, they have to capture that runoff and direct it to a stormwater management facility. So that could be an underground storage, that could be into a storm sewer system. It could be into a retention pond. And the thing is, it has to reduce the amount of water, even that's going into, let's say, a creek. It has to reduce the amount of water that's going into the creek compared to today. And typically what happens, the way those stormwater retention ponds, excuse me, no, I don't write retention. I don't know, detention, whichever. They're typically, they're not intended to hold water. They hold water back. What that means is they have a good amount of volume but they have a smaller outlet. So the amount of water that goes out into the subsequent stormwater system, it goes at a lower rate. So what'll happen is during a heavy rain, and we typically build them. Unfortunately, our director of engineering and planning isn't here. I don't know if my deputy supervisor will be able to help me with some of these questions, but if I remember correctly, they plan for a 50-year flood event. And maybe even a 100-year flood event. So that's how they size the pond. So the idea is if it rains all day, that would be able to hold all the water from that rain and what I'll call a normal runoff would occur. And by normal, I don't mean as to what we're seeing today, but for a light rain. So again, the way that the planning board is going to require it and the way our town engineering and planning, as well as my deputy town supervisor who works with that department to oversee the construction, they will require that the system has to be designed and engineered to accomplish that, and they'll check it afterwards. And if it's not, we'll require them to modify it until it does what it is required to do, which is reduce the amount of water coming to you.
So the recourse that we would have is if we're still having water running down our back hill, we'll just call you and let you know.
Turn around a second. Craig, raise your hand. That's who you want to talk to.
All right.
Okay. And like I said, if you talk to some of the developers, they'll know Craig does not let them slide.
Wonderful. I'm happy about that. Have you taken into consideration any impact on our school system?
That we don't do that. The school district does.
All
They're
right.
aware. We keep them regularly apprised of stuff coming, and they take that into account and plan for it accordingly.
The other concern that we have is, of course, construction. And we're gardeners, as many of our friends and neighbors are. And what's the quality of life going to be for us this summer if they're building several apartment buildings, between the noise, the construction of them, the big trucks that will be coming and going, and the traffic in and out with the big trucks. I find, our street is a very quiet street, and it's almost like I feel invaded by because we've so enjoyed
Right.
our quiet, and we're loaded with wildlife in our backyard, and we wonder, where are they going to go? Are they going to just leave them there? I guess that's what they hope
Yeah.
to do. But there are 18 deer in that little area, and there are foxes and coyotes, and we've seen them all, believe me. So that's another concern. It's like, we came to suburbia over 50 years ago for peace and quiet and a lovely place to live. And now we're going to be having in our backyards construction vehicles, noise, dust, dirt, and we don't want it. And I like progress as well as the next person, and I'm not opposed to it. But being so close to where we all live makes it very difficult to me to understand what does Henrietta benefit from this. There are apartment houses all over behind the library. There are tons of apartment houses. And have these gentlemen, has this company already purchased the property?
I suspect I can answer the question as to how most of these deals work, and based on his shaking the head, I'm sure it's the same way. They have a qualified offer in, it's contingent upon them getting approval.
All right.
That's typically how that
I,
would work.
I've taken up enough of your
Yeah, so
time.
let me just address a couple of those things, you know. Obviously, whenever we can, we try to preserve land. You know, but for instance, to buy this property, to preserve it. So first, just to be clear, we can't take away someone's property rights. Just as we couldn't tell you, you know what? When you're done with your house, you can't sell it. You're gonna have to knock your house down and turn it wild so those animals have a place to live, right? You'd be outraged over that, of course,
right.
right? This is someone's property, and to say, sorry, you can't build anything here because there's deer and fox that live there today, that's not fair to those property owners. Now, the.
Oh, no, I
I
understand that.
I'm just saying,
Yes.
I just want to make sure everybody's clear on this. And, you know, some people say, well, why doesn't the town buy it? And the simple answer to that is we don't have the budget for it. You know, to acquire this parcel alone, and it's not a very big parcel, would require us to raise our tax levy. I went and calculated it. It would require us to raise it by about 20%. That's just for this little parcel, because we have such a low tax rate. You know, people point to Pittsford and say, well, Pittsford buys properties. They do. They collect, I don't remember what it is, $1 million something a year from people's property taxes in order to acquire that. If people are really interested in that, we can put on a proposition on the next town ballot in the fall to say, and obviously it'll be too late for this project if this project gets approved, but basically what it would say is, you know, we're going to collect a certain amount of money. It's going to sit in escrow and it's going to be used to buy properties. Now, one of the challenges I see for that as town supervisor is how do we make that decision? Why do we buy this property instead of the one behind CVS or the one down to the former Jack Moore property or Growmore, excuse me, or the you know, there's the one at the Delphi property, right? That becomes a tough challenge. I won't lie. You know, when we do identify certain ones, so in fact, I think on the, I don't know if it's on tonight's agenda. No, I think it was the last meeting.
It was.
Yeah, we purchased an empty parcel to turn into a historic park. That's at the corner of, it's in the West Hamlet, so at the corner of Erie Station Road and West Henrietta Road. Small parcel. And we actually had some residents who essentially donated their time and effort to make a ton of improvements to turn it into a park. So again, we do that occasionally, but we just don't have the budget to do all these. In terms of the, you know, impact on your house, like I said, that's exactly why we put the transition buffer in. And just to tell a quick story, when I lived on the corner of John and Bailey, the house, the area behind me was all farmland and it became industrial. And our neighbors to the north, the company, they wanted to buy them out. They didn't want to sell. So they put their parking lot right up to their property line. And I never forgot that. And so when I first got into office, and the town board was already starting this comprehensive land use, I brought that story to Rick and the rest of the board. And we all agreed we should do something about that. And that's kind of where these transition buffers come from. In terms of the construction, there's really no way around that, other than I will say that we do monitor for dust. And again, that same person, my deputy town supervisor, if there is a dust issue, you call him, he'll get right out there. And if it's a problem, so if it's dry, they're supposed to wet it down to reduce the dust. There's a lot of stuff. The noise, there's a noise ordinance, so they can only construct within certain time, but you do get inconvenienced. Where my house is today, I'm not that far from Cooper Vision. I can hear the construction vehicles, the beep, beep, right? Every time those construction vehicles go into reverse, I hear them. You can hear.
Do you like it?
I don't, but I also am not going to say Cooper Vision, sorry, you can't expand in Henrietta. Those 100 jobs you're going to add to town, don't want them because I don't want to hear.
Not adding jobs to the town.
They're adding a couple. but there also are adding housing. I will tell you, affordable housing, to answer your question as to how does the town benefit, not that that's actually a determining factor in this, but to answer your question, how does the town benefit? There is still a huge demand for housing, not just purchases, but also rentals.
How long will the construction take? Can you?
I would say that site work is 6 to 12 months and the buildings are being built at the same time. So you're looking at a duration of from beginning to end a couple of years, but realistically, when you're doing the site work, there's minimal site work that gets done on this site.
Right. Just to be clear, a lot of that time is interior, which you're not going to
Yeah,
hear.
you're not. There's a
Once they have the outer walls up, you're not going to hear the.
So maybe I.
That's my father-in-law always says is that's the advantage of hearing aids. I can take them out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you for your feedback. Is there anyone online, Becky?
We do have a couple of folks online, but none with hands raised.
Hands raised. Okay. Next person out in the audience, come on up.
All right, first, if I get the coughing, I'll ask you, please excuse me on that.
No problem.
Unfortunately, it's,
Your name and
my name is Brian Walker. I live at 312 Lycoming Road. I've been a Henrietta resident for 59 years. I just turned 62. All of that time, except for 2 years when my wife and I were first married, was in that house at 312. That property that's up for discussion has been a wildlife area for all those years. I've seen it change as far as that wildlife has gone. I've seen so many changes. It's been interesting. In fact, it was very interesting to hear that I've been here longer than the Grangers. But can I ask to have that map put up again?
sure.
Sorry, I was working on pulling up a satellite image. Let me get back to the map.
Okay, may I for a second?
Sure.
Sure.
I can't read it from this distance.
I understand that. Hold on one second. I'm going to give you a mic if you're, are you just looking or are you going to talk?
Just looking real quick.
Thanks, Greg.
Okay, that answered my question.
Okay.
Okay, since that first meeting, a month or so ago, obviously situating the buildings has changed a few things, but it simply has changed it from one problem, one direction to another, completely different problem to another direction. This is still going to be a huge, what's the word I'm looking for? Pain for everyone that lives from Thompson Road clear over to Hollybrook, for the sound issues, the dust issues, the dirt issues.
And you're talking during construction.
During construction. I'm seeing just the way the parking lot's designed, there is going to be some major sound issues. Once you get residents of, by the way, is it 120 units or 102 units? I've heard both numbers.
102.
It is 102, because originally it was mentioned at 120 units.
We lowered the density count when we went from 3 buildings to 2 buildings.
Ah, okay. All right, well, that's still a lot to put in one small area. Now, I guess my first thing is, this is basically going to be, for lack of a better description, an eyesore for everyone who lives in my general area. And I'm just right around the corner from the map there.
What makes it an eyesore?
Because 4-story buildings, 40 feet of apartment, plus another, what about maybe 15 feet for the roof line?
Is it a
Okay.
gable or a flat roof?
It's a gable roof. Yeah. So I think you're probably at 50 feet, 52.
Right.
50 to 55.
What's the height with regards to the center point of the gable?
Center point of the gable's 47.
Okay, I wasn't too far off in my
Right.
guesstimation.
Mhm.
We're going to have these huge buildings, okay? I've driven around Henrietta, paying a little closer attention since this all came up. I do not find one apartment building that's over 3 stories. Now, if I'm wrong on that, please let me know. We do not need 4-story apartment buildings going up in Henrietta. Okay, anything of any appreciable height is away from residents. And this is going to be in such a way that it's going to be an invasion of privacy. It's going to be an invasion of just our general peace of mind. And where this is going to be going, and for where we all live, in the junction is, do any of you live where this is going to affect what you see when you look out your front windows or drive down your street? Okay, I didn't think so. This is going to affect us every day. We're going to have to look at this. All right. Yes. In the design drawings we saw at the other meeting, they actually look like very nice buildings. But it's the simple fact that this is taking away from us a major natural resource. Okay. And you know what? I'm going to add something to this in case anybody decides to be a smart aleck. I'm the guy outside that drives the Hummer. So before anybody decides to get picky about natural resources, yeah, I drive something that's not the best on gas, but not the worst. But by the same regards, I have a high respect for nature. As Mrs. Granger said, we have 15 to 18 deer that call this as part of their range. They've only been around for maybe 15, 20 years. That doesn't sound like much, I realize, but to those of us living in this area, we enjoy it. There is nothing to compare with looking out your window and watching the deer walk around, or in the spring, watching the fawns. As they're coming out, they're learning to explore the area and watching them play. We're going to lose all of that. Okay. Those deer, yeah, you're going to leave a little veggie barrier for them, but they're going to move. We're going to lose that. Okay. There's a lot of other wildlife I'm afraid we're going to lose if this is allowed to happen.
So I guess my question is, how do you propose to say that? Are you telling me to say to this property owner, sorry, you can never develop your property?
I'm saying maybe something needs to be looked at that's less invasive.
Like?
You know what? Even if they were looking at saying, let's put in a small housing development. I wasn't even going to bring that up, but even something like that, that's not going to be.
That would actually have greater impact on the wildlife because you'd now be all partitioned up. You'd have fences. Oh, by the way, that buffer wouldn't exist because it'd be, those houses would be right up against your backyards.
But this is the thing, those houses would be 1 story, maybe 1.5, depending on how some of the designs go. They're not going to be a 4-story building. Okay. That whole thing, a 4-story building in that location, what kind of a precedent is that setting for the rest of Henrietta?
It's not a precedent. There's other 4-story apartment buildings in town.
Where?
There's one on John Street that I think is 5, maybe 6 or 7 stories.
Okay.
There's a
That's
bunch
away from
on
houses.
East. What's that?
That's away from houses.
It is not. It's immediately adjacent to a house.
Which was there first, the apartment building or
house.
houses? I'll have to drive over there.
Yeah.
Okay. I will admit, I did not drive over there. I looked around.
There are
our
houses,
general
there's
area.
ones going up right now on East River Road. There were other apartments already of that height on East River Road, again, immediately adjacent to houses. So it's.
Well, in our area, it's not. And
Right.
it doesn't
So-
need to be.
In this area, did you need to apply for a height variance?
No.
Yeah, so that's the height limit that was set for that area long ago when they created the zoning districts. It's hard to come along to somebody and say, well, we said 50 feet, but what we really meant was 25 feet. I understand what you're saying, but we also have to rule within the confines of zoning laws and town laws. And so, like I said, because that area says it's 50 feet, it's hard to say, sorry, you can't build a 50-foot tall structure, even though the law says you can. you know, in terms of the invasion of privacy, again, they completely reoriented the buildings to
Mhm.
try to get away from that. They did reduce the density from 120 to 102. In response to comments, they've made sure they're not violating that buffer in any way that will allow them to leave those, the current vegetative buffers up there. So hopefully you'll be seeing those. Will you be able to see the tops of the building over the tops of the trees? Possibly, probably, I don't know.
There's no net, there's no sequoias over there.
Oh, it
So we're
doesn't-
going to
doesn't-
see these buildings.
doesn't
They're going to be
require-
as plain as that sign up there.
It doesn't require a sequoia. Again, going back to my house, I'm actually on the top of a hill
Mhm.
and I cannot see 40-foot buildings to the south of me just because of tree covers. I have a 40-foot tall structure down the hill diagonally that I can see.
Mhm.
But it doesn't impose on my field of view. You know, in terms of your question, do we live here? Obviously, we can't live in every place in town. So there's always going to be developments away from where we live. We don't treat that any differently if we don't play NIMBY. We look at the rules and apply the rules. You know, and one of the things is, again, it's you've got to look at what they're allowed to do. And then a big part of the public hearing, as we talked about this at the community hearing, is to understand what the impacts are and to get the development to minimize those impacts. And if they are either unwilling or unable to, then we can deny it. But if we present, here's all the impacts, here's all the negative impacts, and they mitigate them all, there is no basis upon which we can deny it. And if we do deny it, it's very simple. They go to court, say, this was arbitrary and capricious. The judge says, you're right. And we have to change our stuff. So, you
Yeah,
know,
but like I said, I was at that other meeting. Everyone, and I was hoping for a better turnout tonight. Everybody was against this project. Nobody wants to see this.
right. Nobody wants new development in their backyard. When you get to enjoy the fact that your neighbor's property is empty and you get to enjoy people love to live in there. We have another apartment that was going in Riverton area where people had actually mowed trails through that property and were using it for their own purposes. Of course, they're opposed to it. They want to keep using those trails, but it's not their right. Those other people own the property and they have a right to development within the confines of the property law. Again, would I love to see a bunch of these areas stay empty? I absolutely would. And we've worked with the Genesee Land Trust to acquire property within town to preserve it and to make it forever wild. Now, that's not the correct term, but that's what people think. It's basically to put a conservation easement on that. It doesn't make as much sense in a commercially zoned district. I realize your houses are to the back of it, you know, but again, I will probably point out if we had the records from the development when your houses were being built, I wouldn't be surprised if there were neighbors nearby saying, I don't want all these houses near my, you know, this used to be farm. I can go back in the imagery and I guarantee you that was farmland.
I know it was.
And so that's the nature of land development. I get it. We don't want it in our backyard, but that's not a reason we can rule on that. I heard some discussion prior to the meeting where people said it's a done, decided decision. That's not true at all. But we have to look at the facts. We have to understand what the stuff is, and we have to rule based off of was it 9 criteria upon which to judge the special use permit in addition to the seeker, which is a state environmental quality review. So again, we look and identify all those things. And we try to get them to minimize the impact of their development. But if they are compliant within the rules of the zoning laws, we can't turn around and say no. The reason for a special use permit is because of these issues. And so again, going back to the other thing, without the special use permit, we wouldn't have been able to tell them, hey, have that community meeting. You got to mitigate the issues overlooking the right. They'd have been able to go straight to site plan, straight to building. So that's a lot of people think that if there are enough people against some development of a property, we can say no. We don't have that authority. We don't have that authority from just because there's a bunch of people who are opposed to a project to say no. We have to say no based off of the law and the consideration for that. So.
So the people that elected you to be on this board do not have a say in what happens in our own town?
We don't have the right to take people's property away. So if this town board said, we're gonna demolish your house, move out, we're gonna, you know what? We want to widen the area for those, we don't want 18 deer, we want 36 deer. We're gonna get rid of all those houses, move out. You'd be upset about it, right? Because we're taking your property away. By us saying no to this developer, if they're building within the rules, you're taking their property rights away. The other way you can do it is your neighborhood could collect a bunch of money, or if you have a rich person living there, they could buy that property and put a conservation easement. That's absolutely allowed. And again, where the town can, the town has done that and some stuff. We just don't have the money to do it everywhere where everybody wants. So you can elect whomever you want into this position. They still have to follow the laws. We're governed by the laws of the state of New York.
Mm-hmm.
And property owners have a constitutionally protected right to their properties. We cannot take it away. I don't know what else to tell you.
Well,
I know it's not the answer you want to hear, but
if you move against what the residents of Henrietta want, I guess we'll have to see come next ballot time, because
I'm okay with that. I was
Yeah.
really enjoying retirement before I decided to run for office. But again, just be forewarned, the next people you elect in will also have to follow the law. They'll also have to follow the rules. If
there's
you
following the rules, and then there's also realizing what the people that elected people into office. Oh, you can sit there and laugh.
well, how am I supposed to stop it? You tell me. How am I supposed to say no?
Well, unfortunately, I'm not a constitutional law lawyer,
Okay.
but by the same regards, I also understand that by the Constitution, people elect our officials to, what is the term? Represent us in matters of local
We are,
endeavors.
and we are,
If-
but we also swear our oath to uphold the Constitution.
Mhm.
And that's what I'm going to do. And again, if you want to vote someone else into this office, please, by all means do. I'm not a power hungry person. I'm not doing this to I did this because I didn't like what I was seeing.
Mhm.
And if somebody else comes along and takes this position, I'm be happy for it.
Supervisor.
Happy to serve too.
If I may, I think one of the things that the board often does have a certain level of authority over is the comprehensive land use plan. But once those plans are in place, then we need to abide by the plans. We can't change them just because a project is coming into place. We have to abide by the rules that we have already set in place. And it has to be applied consistently to everyone that requests that we apply them. That said, I do have a couple of other questions for the supervisor and for the developers.
Do you have any
if
other
unless
questions?
you have
No,
additional-
this is, I
Okay.
knew this was not going to go anywhere, but I wanted my say in there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor, we are looking, this is a special use permit for density for 102 units. What is the maximum allowed?
So again, for an apartment complex, during the apartment complex, we have the ability when setting that to adjust the density. Could you restate what the requested density is versus the zoning allowed density?
We're asking for 14.6 units an acre versus the 12 units per acre. So 2.6 units more per acre versus our original of, I think we had 18.8 or something
Right.
like that.
And you said apartments, is this zoned industrial? Or
It's
is this zoned
zoned
residential?
commercial B2,
Commercial. Thank you.
and commercial B2 does allow for apartments up to, again, 12 units per acre.
Okay. And Supervisor, what is the status of the other apartment complex that's going in just down the street? Do we know that?
Have they put in, Craig, would you happen to know whether they put in a site plan? Do they have site plan approval at CVS? Yeah, so to my knowledge, they're at planning board. They don't have site plan approval.
Right. And I've heard screening and things like that discussed several times. Would you mind expanding on that just a little bit?
The big conversation popped up during the community meeting of the screening. And what that really means is the buffer zone and the limits of disturbance that exists surrounding the property of 50 feet. We're not going to go in and take down the trees. There's dead trees on there, and then we'll clear those out. But as much of the screening as we can keep in, we definitely will keep in. There was a conversation about a fence surrounding the property. This went back and forth because people didn't want those wandering from one property to the other. But then also there was a conversation of, well, if there's animals, how do they go from one to the other? For us, we're happy to put the fence up. Not a big deal for us. We can do that. So we're open to that.
You know, one of the things I would look at is where I would want to see a fence is along the back side of the parking lot so that headlights aren't shining through and towards the properties.
Yeah, we're able to look at that. Sure.
Was there any conversation about a berm or anything along those lines for?
The problem with the berm, there will probably be something along those lines. There's probably going to be a swale just past the parking lot and the berm or something along those lines to connect and channel the water. Problem, if you go with too big of a berm, you're now clearing trees out to build that berm.
Right.
And so some of that, I think that's what I think planning board needs to take a look at is where are the neighbors going to get better screening from leaving the vegetation there or removing the vegetation and build a berm. To be honest, I think that's going to require a site visit to look at that actual screening. And/or this company would make a recommendation based off of that, potentially with photographs to show why, you know, like I said, I think you'd be better off with a vegetative screening. And, you know, I could see, since they're required to have a certain number of trees per the lot, I could see that some of those trees be used as infill to replace some of the dead vegetation to keep a nice solid wall. In fact, I'd even want to see if some of those could be evergreens so that in the winter when the leaves come down,
right,
there's still screening between the two.
Yeah, vegetative screening would be better for everybody. You can imagine if you have an opaque fence of some sort, those don't always look great over time. But we like to do the vegetative ones just for that reason. They grow. They're much better to look at. People like those, and they work just as well, especially when you're talking about 50 feet and then you're talking about other people's property. You know, to shine light directly into somebody's house takes a lot of effort to get it right on, especially when you have trees and bushes and all that kind of stuff.
I will agree with that. Although, like I said, if I were to see anything, it wouldn't have to be a very tall fence, but the idea is so that you have gaps of trees, but as the cars are coming through, there's almost always a gap.
Yeah.
Right. So that could be accomplished by a berm or a, like a stockade fence, something like that. It wouldn't have to be very tall. Again, I'd be mostly interested in seeing it stop the lights. Now, again, if there was some discussion with the neighbors about essentially, I guess I've heard the statement go both ways, but I guess it's the fences make good neighbors side of it. Is the idea is they wanted a fence across there to prevent or to minimize the number of people who go through the woods and into the neighbor's yard. So obviously those individual property owners have the ability to put a fence up on their yard as well, but so. I see you. Just hold on. I'm going to finish the council members' questions and then I'll call back up there.
Is there a traffic study associated with this?
Yes, we have conducted traffic study.
Is that coming?
I'm sorry,
before-
a trip generation study.
The trip generation.
Based on the trip generation results, it was determined that a full-blown traffic study wasn't warranted.
Because it's a state road, it's the state DOT that looks at that and makes those determinations.
Okay.
So. Any other questions?
Um,
And obviously, if you've got one, you can come back later. I just. mentioned
yeah,
that.
yeah. I guess I was just somewhat concerned about the construction vehicles. That they be fully off of the road and there not be any construction vehicles. Parked or anything loading or anything like that on the road, because that is a very busy road.
Yeah, I guarantee you the state will come down on them hard if they unload in that. So. They, yeah, typically what happens, they'll have to build a construction road and a staging area where they can pull in, unload. And typically what that would be is that first parking lot is probably where they would do it. So now all the construction vehicles are essentially compacting the stone that goes in there. There'd be required to be a certain amount of gravel area out front so that any vehicles coming off, the mud comes off before it goes into the road. And again, that is something that our town officials pay a lot of attention to, and we have shut projects down because they've been putting too much mud out onto the roads. So.
And I'm assuming that there will be limited construction hours,
Correct.
Strictly so that residents will be disturbed as little as possible.
Yeah, that's right in our town code and our noise ordinance. Okay. The gentleman who hasn't spoken yet, go ahead.
My name is Harlan Granger. Is this property totally, what is the zoning of that property?
Commercial B2.
The whole property? Or just part of that property?
Leave the whole property. I'd have to look at the map.
The entire property, plus it's within the mixed use,
Overlay district. Yeah.
Because everything around there is residential.
Understand that's, they have the commercial corridors on both East River Road and West Henrietta Road, even though backing up to a lot of those are residential. That's how the town's zoning's been like that for years. I don't know. Those are some of the earliest commercial districts in the town of Henrietta.
I think this water problem is a lot more complex than what everybody is talking about. You've got buildings that shed water. You've got the driveways or streets or whatever you want to call it. And you've got parking lots. And you're going to eliminate some of the, at least a portion of the vegetation that's there. And that spells real problems as far as I'm concerned. All the property around there, first of all, it's clay soil and it doesn't drain well. And all the houses, all the way around that property have water problems now. And you're going to take this, put all that water shed in this whole area, and it's got to go somewhere. I don't see how that's going to be effectively controlled.
So very simple. There's a lot of science and engineering behind that. And if they can't accomplish it, then it can't get built. It's that simple. In terms of, you talk about the Henrietta Clay I mean, that gets into why today that soil doesn't drain well, right? And why you're having a bunch of runoff issues from this property is because even without the pavement, it doesn't soak up much water, right? So again, the idea here is, and it's not just an idea, it's a requirement that they are going to have to design the stormwater runoff system so that they're capturing that runoff that's happening today, as well as any runoff from any of the impervious surfaces that they're introducing. So obviously the roof's pretty simple, gutters, downspouts, et cetera. Parking lots, it's how you grade those parking lots. A lot of times what they'll do, you'll see is there'll be a catch basin in the parking lots. They'll slope into that, and that will run into your stormwater system. You know, for the large open areas, again, across that back where I see the slope dropping off, and the second image has some of the slope line, I'd want to see them catch that and bring it. If I had to guess, where a stormwater detention pond is going to end up, and I'm not a stormwater engineer, but just from looking at these enough, I suspect it's going to be in the northeast corner. And then basically what would happen,
most of the water is going to the south end.
Yeah. And it's possible it could go out that way. There is, it's actually, when I look at it, the slope goes fairly evenly in both directions. Basically, it's pretty much sloping from the west to the east.
Yeah, I can answer that. I mean, when looking at the lowest point of the site, it's on the northeast. So water would flow that way in a system that's designed to capture it. In the southeast, where the pitch is, you're probably seeing a lot of that. And I think this project or this property over time, people have come and started projects and killed projects, whatever it may be. And when people do that, they disturb the soil. They've made flat areas where water just captures and sheets off. What we do and what we are required to do is we're then going to capture that water that just now flies everywhere into our system, goes to the northeast in a retention system, and then drains from there. So, you know, right now you have a piece of property that just sheets water out to the lowest point wherever it can go.
Well, it
We
shoots
capture-
water off all around.
Yeah, and so we capture that water that's coming off onto all the impervious areas and then capture it and then don't let it fall off the site. That's the concept. And that's
Well,
what-
and it's not even just,
we're aware of that. Yeah. What we get. Yeah.
it's not just the impervious surfaces too. Again, anything that sheets off the topsoil. So anywhere they have topsoil, it should soak in, but still on heavy rains, it will still sheet off. It's going to hit that, whether it's the impervious surface or whether it's, like going to the north. Again, that gets into the design as well. I was talking about swales and berms. So you do the grading for the town to direct that any sheeting that occurs in the non-impervious surfaces so that it still gets into your wastewater detention facility. And if you look in the northeast corner, there's even a 20-foot storm sewer easement that then takes it over to the creek. And again, this gets back to today, all that water, whenever it rains, it flows down quickly and enters the creek. Here, there will be some sort of detention facility that will hold it back so that it enters the creek slower. So it will actually you won't see the creek run as high during the heavy rain events from this property. Now, again, when you look at the total watershed of that entire creek, this is just a small part of it. But obviously to the houses immediately downhill from this, it's a significant impact, which is why we have all those requirements in there with regards to stormwater and them designing a system that meets those requirements. And again, basically what we have is stormwater engineers who review what they're going to make a proposal. Our guys are going to look at it and say, this does or doesn't meet the requirements. If it doesn't meet the requirements, they're going to say, here's what you need to change. Or they might even say this does meet our requirements, but you could do even more if you did this. And so that's part of that, the whole process.
This water, it can't stay in that area. There's so much water. Where's it going to go?
Out through Allen's Creek.
And where,
Up,
where's it gonna get bit piped to?
that's what I'm saying, to Allen's Creek,
How does it get there?
through storm sewers. I don't know. There is an existing storm sewer easement. I don't know off the top of my head whether that pipe exists or whether that pipe needs to be put in. But
We can't have a system.
Did that microphone get turned off?
It's designed.
Craig, could you check to make sure that microphone's still on? Hold on one second.
Sorry to interject. Those of us online were having a hard time hearing.
Yep, it's on now. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Okay. I guess I've
So.
explained the water issue.
Right, so like I said, basically what happens. They will collect it, it comes into a stormwater management. That detains the water during a heavy event so that it doesn't overload the capacity of the downstream facilities. It will feed through our stormwater system, some of which is existing, some of which they may need to add. It empties ultimately into Allen's Creek, which ultimately empties into Arundecoit Bay.
Okay. Waste management. There's no waste management currently there.
Sewer?
Yes. So same question here is how is that work?
There is a point where they can tie into the existing sanitary sewer. Our sanitary sewer department has looked at this and determined that there is enough capacity to handle that. And so it's basically going to empty into the existing system, which ultimately empties into the Monroe County trunk sewer that carries it up to the Van Lair treatment plant.
Okay. The other thing I noticed, the parking lots. From what I can see, those parking lots are not going to be adequate for this whole area. They're not going to be people with children.
That
we can't limit who comes there, but from our entire portfolio of projects, this meets or actually exceeds the amount of parking that we need.
So basically, they're not saying you can't have children there,
Yeah.
but the
Okay.
apartments they're designing, in other words, like typically if you're building apartments that are going to be families, you're looking at 3-bedroom, larger number of bedrooms per unit. These are not, these are what, 1 and 2?
Which are just 1 and 2 bedroom
Yeah,
apartments.
so the likelihood of there being children there is reduced. But again, basically what they're doing, and are you applying for a parking variance?
Yes.
Yeah, so that decision would be made at the zoning board. They basically would come in with evidence that here are all the projects we've built very similarly. Here is actual vehicular data from those apartment complexes, the amount of parking spaces they currently use. It's actually a fairly standard practice. One of the things, the reason that whole board's created, you can't possibly write codes that cover all instances, right? And so to give you an example, student apartments typically are even less dense parking than this if they're situated near campus and there is a shuttle bus, because the kids move there, they don't have a car, they ride the shuttle bus, right? Senior apartments have a different parking density generally than, the different types of apartments. So what typically happens, they'll come in, they'll present all their evidence as to why, and then they'll basically, the zoning board will either approve or deny that variance. That's in front of them.
In our area, most houses have at least 2 cars. Some of them have trailers. Some of them have trucks. So I don't see how the parking lots are going to be adequate for that area.
How many parking spaces are we looking at?
We're looking at 165 spots under normal conditions. We would have 153. The parking ratio is 1.62 spaces per unit, but also say that we don't allow people to store vehicles on site. So trailers and all that kind of stuff. I mean, a house typically has 3 bedrooms, maybe more. One bedroom has 1 car, 2 bedrooms, sometimes has 2 cars, sometimes has 1 car. Somebody rents an office. So it's a give or take, but we don't allow people to store other vehicles on site.
Even families, even a 1-bedroom apartment many times has 2 people in it. So they need 2 cars, 1 for the wife to go or whatever.
Understood. Again, that's
And 1 for the husband.
ultimately that's a decision of the zoning board, not the town board.
Everything is the zoning board.
Not everything,
Just this.
just the parking variance, the zoning board. The parking variance is the zoning board, not the rest is, that's not them. The different jurisdictions have control, as I mentioned. In terms of the traffic onto the road, it's a state road, so it's a New York State DOT who they've been having to talk to with regards to their entrances out to the road, with regards to the amount of traffic they're putting onto the road, whether they need to do a full-fledged traffic study or not. That's up to the New York State DOT. The County Department of Health, the County Department of Planning, everybody has input on different portions of the project.
It's strange that you're building this complex and you're looking at what the requirements are in particular areas. That doesn't mean that's what happens in real life.
I'm not sure what you're implying with that. But in terms of if we put requirements on this, they will need to meet those requirements or they potentially lose their certificate of occupancy. So not sure what more beyond real life that means in terms of, are you suggesting that the New York State DOT doesn't take a close look at that? That may be, that may not be. But to be honest, I don't have jurisdiction there. I can't tell the New York State DOT what to do.
Yeah, well, we all know that some of those requirements are outdated or they're just not accurate.
Including our parking requirements, which every developer that is coming to town has told us we require too many parking, and all one needs to do is go look at places like Lowe's and Target and places like that, and the huge sea of parking spaces that sit predominantly empty because our code requires that they put in a bunch of parking spaces that aren't used. What we've been doing in more recent times is for areas like that, we have been doing what's called land bank parking, which basically means we ask them to leave it green, don't pave it unless it's shown that they really need it. So in most cases, we've actually reduced the number of required parkings. We find that we have discussed updating our codes. I will tell you, there's a lot of portions of the town code that need updating, but I will also tell you that from a parking standpoint, we have generally found that our requirements ask for too many parking spaces, not the other way around.
And to speak on that point, with the reduction of the parking, we'll be saving approximately 15,000 square feet of paved area.
Right. He's saying that there'll be about 15,000. If they were building it to what the town code calls for, there'd be an additional 15,000 square feet of impervious area. That if they go by the standards that they find in their complexes, that means there's more green space, less impervious surface.
Have you looked at the effects on East Henrietta Road and traffic?
Again, we have to an extent, but New York State DOT has significantly. In fact, they are in the process of, I think it was 2024, I think is when they're talking about repaving.
No, I'm
15
talking about capacity, not.
Yeah,
paving.
well, it's also because during that, they're also looking at any changes in terms of turns and lanes and stuff like that. So in terms of capacity, they did not in any way identify this as being an issue.
With all the problems that we have and have been brought up here, I guess I don't understand why anyone would want to approve this in this area.
So when you say problems, there are issues that you guys have that you don't want. You want a long empty properties next to you to stay empty. We get that. That's not technically a problem.
But certainly a problem for everybody around us.
It is not a problem as much as it is, you see it as a detriment. That's not the same thing. A problem would be that this was a 2-lane road and there's no way it could handle the traffic coming out of here. That's not the case, right? A problem would be that there was no sanitary sewer anywhere. And so there's no place for sanitary sewage to go. That's not the case. A problem would be that there is no stormwater system that they could capture and take this water to. That those do exist and they have the capacity. So again, that's not a problem. When we look at what problems that were identified in the neighborhood meeting, it had to do with, and it was actually identified it to them before they even brought it to the neighborhood meeting. I told them that this is one of the things that we've seen in other developments. There was one north of Castle Road where it was before I took office, but the building was oriented like this and all those balconies were looking into people's backyards and they hated it. And so that's how this was originally, that one kind of diagonal parking lot was originally a building. And I told them that one's going to be problematic because it's looking into people's backyards. And so that's an example of what this board does is we say, this is a problem, you need to resolve it. So they did. They basically went from 3 smaller buildings to 2 larger buildings and they oriented them so that none of them, the balconies are facing immediately any houses. In fact, originally we had asked them, can you swing it this way? They went even further than that and eliminated it altogether. So again, those are the problems. They're referred to potential negative impacts under seeker. And we identified a bunch of those and they've been addressing those. And that's the purpose of this public hearing, is to gather those to put them in. We can't, we live in a democracy, but you have rights in your democracy and people can't vote and say, I don't want you to be able to develop your property. That's not something that we're allowed to authorize. And again, you can vote me out and bring someone else in, but we're trying to look at, is this following the rules? And if it's following the rules, and we identify issues and they mitigate every single one of those issues by zoning laws, there's no basis upon which we can say, you can't do this. I know you guys would prefer deny it. But again, what we're listening to the problems that you guys have brought forth. And so water is one of them. We're saying they absolutely have to fix that water. If they can't come up with a drainage plan that captures that water and reduces the amount of runoff, then they can't build it. It's that simple, right? We talked about the privacy. They've come up with a site plan that addresses the privacy issue. If they didn't, and they never fix that problem, we could deny it. But they fixed that issue, right? We've looked at it, you know, so like I said, that gets back to all these things. We identify the stuff, and if they can mitigate and correct those issues, that's not a basis by which we can deny it.
You
Does that make
know,
sense?
there's a lot more land in Henrietta that would be more appropriate to this project than what this property is. I don't understand why they're proposing to use this property rather than some other place. There are land in Henrietta that's level that don't have the same issues that we have here.
Is it
And
zone?
probably better in a lot of other areas where there's problems here.
Is it zoned for multifamily? That, because that plain and simple, if it's not zoned for multifamily, they can't build an apartment complex there. So if that's not an allowed use, it might be flatter,
Well,
but they
I'm
can't
not,
build it
I'm
there.
not talking a specific area. I'm just saying there's probably flat land around here that is zoned properly that would fit their project better than
Right.
the land that is there
I will tell you that,
currently.
I will tell you, there are not a lot of properties left where people can build apartment complexes. There aren't.
Why don't they do it then?
Why don't they do what?
Why don't they use those
I'm
properties?
saying there aren't many left.
There's not a
There's not a
lot.
whole lot left. There are some that
There's-
there are some in areas. So one of the things we did, so
There's a
No.
lot of property around here.
it's not necessarily zoned, because going back to the things you said, if there isn't sufficient, when we look at what areas can be zoned for multifamily, you have to look at, does it have the utilities to be able to support the sewage and the drainage or the parking and the traffic and all that stuff? In some parts of these in town, they're not built for that. They wouldn't be able to support it. And so those areas would not be zoned for multifamily.
I don't think we got the facilities for this area.
Well, you can believe that, but the people whose job it is for a living to work on those stuff and to analyze them do believe they have enough facilities.
You mean to tell me that we're not going, if they use this property, you're not going to have to make changes to fit that?
Correct. There is enough capacity in this.
Nothing in Henrietta
Nothing in Henrietta what?
that would better fit their,
That's not, again, that's not our decision. When someone comes in, they say, well, why are they building the restaurant there? Why don't you, town board, tell them to build it over there? That's not our choice. We don't own the property. Someone comes to us with a use, and it's our job to look at the use and say, one, does this fit with the zoning laws? Two, look at the seeker, this quality review, and identify potential issues that they must mitigate. And then three, there are 9 factors by which we judge that. And we look through all that. And if they meet all those 9 requirements, if they've mitigated all of the issues and they do fit in the zoning, then we approve it. If they are unable or unwilling to mitigate all the issues, if they don't meet the zoning requirements, or any of those things negative, then we deny it. But one of the things for not in my backyard is not a legitimate reason for us to deny something. It just isn't under New York state law. So if there was not the capacity to handle the sewage from this facility, we would have told them early on, there isn't the capacity to handle the sewage from this facility. So either you can't build here, or they would have to pay to upgrade all those sewers mains in order to get the capacity. And some developers go that route. Few of them go that route because it's too expensive. But in this case, there is the capacity for that sewage.
Gentlemen and ladies, I thank you for my time. And I just want to say that with all the problems that are here, I don't understand how this project could be approved.
Thank you. Come on up.
My name is Steve Gascoigne. I live at 64 Lane Road. Just have some specific questions for you guys, if you could bring the map up for me.
Becky, if you could bring the map up again, thank you.
By the way, I've owned my property since 2005. There have been many issues, including a really bad water issue, which I also installed my own drain tile at significant expense, I might add. Okay, so my first specific question is.
Could you stay near the mic? Do me a favor and stay near the mic.
Sure
Yep.
thing. Now, it says there is a easement that's been granted already, and there has not been one granted. In between my property and the Fagiano property, which is where they want to run their stormwater, the runoff from the parking lots. They probably want to run a 10-inch. I've already tied into the storm sewer there. To deal with the water problem that's existed. I also have concerns. First one being is that it's inaccurate information. There is no easement that's been granted.
I think that's from the town, so. Unfortunately, the director of engineering is out today, so
Okay, well, the proposed
we
easement.
will confirm that, but to
No,
my
no.
understanding is that is an existing
There
easement.
was a proposed easement when there was another development years ago, okay, which was for a strip plaza, which this would have been probably zoned more correctly for a project like that. We've got a 4-story behemoth, 2 buildings, which we're going to see. 100-foot barrier, whatever, we're going to see this behemoth, these buildings. Okay, they're going to see the parking lots directly behind, come on. So there is no easement. If the deal fell through, I never signed anything, was never offered any money, nothing. There is no easement, period.
Just to understand, easements are platted out and given prior to ownership. I mean, you may own the property, but the storm sewer easement existed prior to your ownership.
There was an agreement that was drawn up. Okay,
Okay.
which I did not sign.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really.
Okay,
Again,
well, anyway,
I will confirm
Okay,
that
you do that.
easement, they have to be filed, so it would be filed at Monroe County Clerk's. If that easement existed, it would have been filed, so we'll
Okay,
confirm.
There's
that.
no easement.
Okay,
So really, adding to what the Grangers have said, this really doesn't fit here for the residents around this area. And there are other areas that are, that would be better for this type of development. I mean, you can't stop progress. I agree with that. We did some research on AR and I don't want to go into it right now, but it wasn't all rainbows and butterflies, believe me.
I've listened to what everybody had to say. And when you start attacking us for who we are, which is really what you're trying to
Well, you're out of state.
insinuate.
okay, I'm
Which-
gonna stop you guys right now. Do me a favor and address the stuff to me. I will ask you to refrain from attacking
this is
the
much. This
company.
is too
It's an
All right,
unfair.
really felt I was attacking, but that
No,
is-
no, no,
Well,
no,
you
you
just
are.
said that it wasn't all you did.
Yeah.
You made a statement denigrating the company.
Yeah, this is
Let's leave
ridiculous.
that out of there for now, okay?
Okay, I apologize.
Yeah.
But this area then will be, property values will go down as a result. Okay. And, you know, I would like to see something about this easement because that is inaccurate. That's all I have to say.
Like I said, I'll research it.
There's a lot of stormwater runoff that has to be captured. You know. And it needs to be done right,
Correct.
you know?
Oh, absolutely. No question.
And
If-
without that easement, it's gonna cost them a lot more money to pump that water elsewhere.
Right.
So no one has talked to me about it. That's just first and foremost, that's inaccurate. Okay, I'm done.
Okay. Well, like I said, we'll find out. That those do have to be filed. Coming up.
I do have a question online as well.
Okay, so why don't we, since this gentleman's been up before, let's take the question online first.
I just have a question from Walter Liss, asking if any of the apartments will be ADA compliant.
Yes, we meet all the ADA requirements. Different states have different ones, but we do have ADA compliant apartments within the community.
You have a percentage of them that will be wired for the deaf and hard of hearing?
Yeah, I don't know what the percentage is here. I can't answer that, but yes, there are, we meet all the ADA requirements.
I'll want that, you'd have that number for the planning board if it
Sure.
advances to that stage. As you know, we, or may not know, we have a large deaf and hard of hearing community in Henrietta.
Yeah,
So,
that's fine.
okay, and was that it online? Okay.
That was it, yes.
Just a slight clarification, if I may. You were talking about the height of the fence, whether or not there would be a berm and a fence or just a fence. And you made a statement, the fence would not need to be very high. I'm just curious, what type of height of fence are we talking?
I was saying to block the headlights.
Right, that's exactly what I'm
Yes.
referring to.
Yeah, so
Where I live, headlights right down in my front window. I can
where are they
easily
coming
see-
from today?
Well, no, with this project, if there's not a proper fence.
Oh, right.
That's why I'm curious as to what height of fence you were talking about.
Typically, so for instance, if it was a 5-foot fence, their headlights aren't over 5 feet off the
Okay.
ground.
Because the other portion of needing a fence that was discussed at the last meeting
Yep,
was obviously to keep people from
Correct.
moving back and forth.
yep.
So. I'm
But
just
as
wondering-
was noted, there were two camps in the neighborhood as to whether they wanted to make sure that that fence didn't disrupt the wildlife.
Mhm.
And so the thought was, let's push the fence, don't do it at the property line,
Right.
do it at essentially what I'll call the buffer line.
Mhm.
And they were willing to do whichever, for lack of a better way to put it, if the community could come into an agreement on there, they'll go with whichever way. So all I was saying is, they were saying a vegetative buffer is better from a screening standpoint. I absolutely agree. That the sole exception is headlights. And when I've got that parking lot, as they're coming in, and especially, the Teal property and the Rhodes property, they're aimed straight at it.
Mhm.
And then all of the properties up through, looks like Lamb, all of those, again, as people pull into those parking spaces, they're aimed right at those backyards. So that's
Mhm.
why I would want to see, if the community can't agree on fence anywhere else, I would want to see a fence along that back parking lot, because I absolutely agree with you. You don't want these headlights aimed straight at your back windows, because I don't care how many trees there are, it still gets through. It's distracting. You're watching TV. Absolutely. Agree with you wholeheartedly.
Okay. And if actually, something else I would just like to say, and I'd like to direct to the company. I researched you guys. Okay. No, please let me.
Okay,
I gotta admit.
you're supposed to talk, you're supposed to talk, to sir, you're supposed to talk to me.
I know, but I also want them to know I was looking for dirt. And I gotta admit, I couldn't find it.
Okay,
But, because there seemed to be a little bit of friction.
right.
I wanted that stated into the record on my account. But,
Appreciate that.
Yeah. So like I say, I did look. And, I do have one other question. Since there is concerns about water, sewage, would they be willing to do some kind of an insurance rider if something could be shown down the line to have been caused through their construction, that they would cover any and all repairs for residents directly affected.
They'll know, I don't know. With regards to, if it happens, in other words, like if they cause something directly, if their action causes that.
If either their action or just down the line.
I don't think we should be giving.
Has
I
residents in it.
understand. I can't address that in terms of,
Well, you said to direct the question to you.
I
know they're
understand that.
listening.
I understand that. I'm just letting you know
Mhm.
in terms of like, if there's a direct cause, then there's typically action that can be taken. There is money held back that they have to, to do improvements and repairs and fixes and stuff like that. As far as it gets into, as you start to, you've now started to cross out of municipal law into tort.
Mhm.
And that's not us, that's the courts.
Right.
So,
Well, like you said, since I had to direct a question
No,
through
understood.
you with them listening.
yep,
So,
that's fine.
all right, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, for the town board, we've got a number of these things. I think we're gonna need to craft a resolution. I'm not ready to do it today. I don't know if someone else has the ability to craft, because I'm gonna want to put some requirements on this based off of the conversations we've had tonight. So those will be, if we issue an approval, it would be with conditions to ensure these things are met. So that goes back to the question before, if they don't do things, what happens? If it's a condition in the special use permit, then if they don't do them, they risk losing their certificate of occupancy. So it gives the town, for lack of a better way to put it, it gives the town a lot of leverage to make sure that these things occur. I'm sure you wanted to get a ruling today, but based on the amount of feedback, I for one am not ready to rule tonight.
We wouldn't be able to act because due to the seeker, hasn't been the 30 days.
Right. Seeker wasn't done anyway, so we couldn't have acted tonight anyway. So that solves the problem.
We're going to continue or table it.
Yeah, so what do we want to keep the public hearing open or close it? Sorry, you wanted to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, pardon me, just a quick question regarding the seeker. Could you elaborate on how it wasn't completed? Submitted, was it just not returned?
It was, no, because when we filed it, it's less than 30 days. So it's either has to be open for, we declare our intent to be lead agency. We either have to wait 30 days or you have to get a response back from all of the other involved or affected agencies saying, we're not interested. I'll tell you, none of the agencies write back. So it pretty much runs 30 days. So we're still inside that 30 days. Therefore, we cannot be lead agency. Because seeker, we haven't had the seeker hearing, then I think that answers our question, Rick, that we need to leave the public hearing open. So I'm going to leave this public hearing open. Becky, when is the first meeting in February? Is that the 8th?
That is correct.
So we will continue this public hearing on February 8th. And in the meantime, what I will start to do is I'll circulate, we'll start to gather the conditions that we have from here and we'll present them at that public hearing and say, this is what we're looking at to address the concerns raised by the neighbors.
And Supervisor, if neighbors that were unable to be here tonight have questions or concerns that they want to express to you, do they email you?
They can email me at supervisor@henrietta.org. And that includes if we've talked about a number of the issues here. If there are other issues that we need to make sure that these folks mitigate, let me know. Again, it's got to be something that is covered by law. So it can't just be, I want it to be open in my backyard. But if it's, like I said, if there's something that you think of later that says, hey, could you make sure they address this? Let me know and we'll pull that into for the next public hearing. Did you gentlemen have any other questions?
We appreciate your time tonight.
You bet. So just to be clear, it is a lead agency. It is a coordinated response. So this seeker will cover both for the town board action and any subsequent planning board action as well. So part of that, we get feedback from the planning board, reviewing the plans to get their feedback as well. So it is a coordinated review.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
So again, I'm going to keep the public hearing open to February 8th. I apologize to Roger Michael Douglas if he's here. Okay. Next up, we have special use permit application number 2022-048. Well, the good news is most of the people cleared out, so they're not here to complain about pigeons. So if you want to come on up, so we've taken a look at this. Unfortunately, as I understand it, there was some confusion and on the town's part, and you didn't get to have your hearing at the zoning board.
Yeah, the gentleman signed off. I guess I handed it in.
Well, they thought that there was some confusion as to whether you needed a special use permit first or not. And so they didn't put you on the agenda because that meeting was before ours when we were actually looking at it the other way. I explained, unfortunately, holiday seasons, a lot of people off. It slipped through the crack. I apologize.
That's okay.
We have looked, so we have, I've reached out to the Cornell Cooperative, gotten a bunch of information. I'm going to send you a document from them that basically covers what they look for in a, I wasn't aware it's called a loft, not a coop, according to them anyway. So what they want to see with regards to that, I want you to look through it and respond, because I'm the way I can't speak for the rest of the board, but I would like to see that if we approve this, it's going to be with those requirements in there. We're not because I had only gotten that back from the Cornell Cooperative basically just prior to the holiday, just prior to Martin Luther King Day. The town board has not had a chance to look at all that yet. So we spoke yesterday. We're not ready to make a decision.
Okay.
And basically what it comes down to is the number of pigeons, and it's going to be based off of, in my opinion, it's going to be based off of, do you meet these requirements from the Cornell Cooperative? And some of them are also in your racing union too. So it basically gets into the size of, and I may not have the terminology correctly, but the nooks where the nesting birds would have to stay. It has to do with, like they talk about, there has to be a space where they can sun themselves if they wish to, enough open space so they can fly around. What I will probably do is I want to schedule a time where myself or maybe another board member or two comes to visit to look at the site, just so we can get a better, because we've seen it from the road, but it's hard to get a good feel for it. I might actually want to step inside. We've gotten a couple emails complaining about sanitation. So the sanitariness, although I will note that most of them were complaining about the previous homeowner. Unfortunately for you, the previous homeowner had a chicken coop and did not keep it clean. And that's what everybody remembers.
Sure.
So
Well,
we're
I'm glad you'll witness it,
right.
fourth most, so.
Right. So it may be an unannounced. Well, like I said, what I want to do is, if you could do me a favor and send an email to supervisor@henrietta.org with a cell phone and or times when we might be able to come by. And I just say that why I don't want to set up a hard appointment, because then the neighbors will say, well, sure, he cleaned it just before you guys got there. So,
Okay.
but like I said, it's one of those, I won't say it's going to be a complete surprise, but I would call you and say, hey, would you be able to stop out? So if you could just give me some times,
Yeah,
because I also know you are a contractor and
right. Well, I just want to let you know, I haven't finished construction. I haven't gone any further on the
Gotcha.
inside. I mean, they have
Until
their perches
pending.
and their boxes, but like I didn't build stairs yet.
gotcha.
So, but it's not tall. You can step up. in
Oh, that's
there.
fine. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I understand the rest of that's not done. And we
Yeah.
appreciate you pausing while this has been determined. So,
Yeah,
you know, quite often people don't realize all the rules. Some people steam ahead anyway, so we very much appreciate. We get it. They didn't know there was a rule there. We appreciate that once you found out the rules, you've been trying to follow them.
yeah,
So we
because
very
I'm
much
gonna
appreciate
side
that.
it. I'm gonna put.
Yeah,
fascia
no, I
on
understand all that.
gutters.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, in fact, that's one of the things is if you've got, you know, a representative picture of what it might end up looking like, that would be useful for the next meeting. So it will be on the February 8th meeting. Again, if you want to get it to us ahead of time, just email it to me. So, you know, if you know what type of siding, or again, if you've looked, you know, so let's say that Walworth Farm, you're modeling it after the loft they built. You can take a picture of that one and say, this is what I'm, you know,
Yeah,
how I'm planning to finish it. Here's what, you know. As I understand from the building inspector, if you are unable to obtain your variance, your plan was either to remove or to reduce the size of your other shed. Because the square footage of this, you wouldn't need a variance. It's because when you combine this with your other shed, you exceed the limit, correct?
right. I thought it was 16 foot over, but I guess there's a 0.1 or 0.2 inches. So it took it to 20 feet over. So basically 4 foot by 5 foot area. So the other shed is a 8 by 8. So I would probably just get rid of it because it's the old coop and it's just so old. And I'd probably put a little 4 by 8.
Right. That's what I'm saying is my point is if you didn't get your variance, it wouldn't change the size of your coop.
Right.
It would change the size of your other storage shed.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
the one gentleman said that would be perfectly
Yep.
fine because
Yeah.
it's in accordance with
It's the total, right. The restriction is on the total
the 1%.
square footage. Yes, exactly. Yep. Okay.
I will say that it's been very interesting learning about pigeons.
Do you have?
I had no idea, and
Yeah,
it's just been very interesting. So I do appreciate that from you, teaching us about them.
yeah.
And Steve doing his background work as well.
Yeah.
Well, if all goes well, we can put one up there.
There you go.
You know?
There you go.
I will say no comment. If we do, I would just ask that it be to scale.
Yeah.
Which scale?
Absolutely.
So,
Sorry you had to wait so long.
yeah.
No, don't.
After I started reading, I had almost thought, you know what, I'm gonna switch the order of these and call you up because especially knowing that we weren't gonna be able to make a decision, so I apologize. But you got to learn a whole lot about this special use permit process.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay.
So,
And I would say, I would love to go with you to see it.
yeah, that's what,
I'm just really intrigued by this, so I would love to go with you to see it, so.
yep. I will also say I did receive a letter from someone complaining about the 50% loss. Just from clarity's sake, for a season, that wasn't just predation, that was also birds not finding their way home. Is that correct?
Yeah, sometimes they get lost and that's why the number fluctuates, like I said, from like 35 to 50 or whatever. It's just
Right.
the breeding, replacing and it goes along with it.
As I pointed out from I was this other research doing, I was looking at and I found this interesting article from somebody in was an ornithologist and animal biologist, I don't remember what else, but talking about where are all the dead pigeons was the headline. And it was basically you have, this is now he's located in London where there are just
Way too many pigeons.
more pigeons than people.
Yeah.
And he's like, where are all the dead pigeons? And he was specifically talking about the quote I included was dying of old age is not a luxury afforded to pigeons.
Yeah.
They just don't
We don't make it.
in
that far.
nature, right? Basically, and it's true of most birds. By the time when they start to slow down, they get caught by the hawks,
Yeah.
falcons, the birds, the foxes.
Well, the racers have an edge. They're the faster ones.
That's right. The old joke saying, I don't have to be faster than the bear. I just have to be faster than you.
That's right.
Yeah, never go hiking with someone faster than you, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So,
It's funny.
well, we very much appreciate the education. We very much appreciate the stuff. Like I said, from we basically need to craft. So similar to the last one, we're going to craft a resolution that talks about what the requirements are going to be on there.
Yeah.
I can't speak for the other board members. I see no reason to deny it as long as the sanitation is met, the space is met, that type of stuff. And from the sounds of it, you're serious about this. You know, like I said, the problem is your prior resident was not, and their chicken coop was awful
Yeah.
from the sounds of it. So, and they had problems with vermin. It brought a bunch of vermin into the neighborhood. So there is a bias against that property that you're going to have to essentially overcome and, you know, invite your neighbors to come visit and clean up your, you know, continue to beautify your yard. I won't say clean it up because I think it is cleaned up, but continue to beautify and they'll forget about that old neighbor and remember you.
Oh, yeah.
So, sounds good. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak on this special use permit, either in person or online? Okay. So hearing none, then again, we are going to continue this on the on February 8th. And again, we apologize for, I should have changed the order. I started to think of, I thought of it after I started to announce the next special use permit. So I didn't think of it in time. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions for us or any additional input?
No, just, you guys have to suffer through the wait too, so I'm here with you.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, you guys have a good night.
Have a
Two.
good night. Too.
Finally, we have a special, or excuse me, we have a public hearing for the proposed local law to amend Henrietta zoning code to allow adult use cannabis retail dispensaries in commercial/industrial corridor of the industrial I district. So based off of a comment last meeting, we added a slight modification to it just to explain Dorsal Parkway. Dorsal Parkway is still the official name in the county database, apparently because it's no longer Dorsal Automotive. I don't know what the name of the road's going to be, but what we basically did, it's the southern boundary of the one parcel. So that's what we basically said. So it's that parkway, and Don added language that just says, you know, along the southern boundary of, I don't remember the address, 3165 or something like that. And we also included the tax map ID. And the advantage of the tax map ID is even if they that number will never, if they subdivide the parcel or change the parcel, it gets a new ID. That ID will always be associated with the boundaries of that parcel as they exist today when we're putting the law, which is why we included the parcel ID. Because again, if you use the address and they subdivide, it could shift the boundary, whereas the parcel ID doesn't change. Any questions, comments? Anyone wish to make a comment with regards to this law? And again, this is mimicking what we had already had in place for the commercial. Originally, I didn't think we needed this because those commercial districts allows the use in industrial, but one of the things that was in there is it said unless expressly prohibited, of which in all the other areas of industrial cannabis retail dispensaries are prohibited, therefore it wasn't allowed. So basically, when you're looking at this map, the green areas show the industrial light commercial districts or ILCDs. They're often also colloquially referred to as the adult use districts because it's where you know, like adult use bookshops would be allowed. So cannabis use is allowed in those. The pinkish, I don't know, salmon color on, that is the commercial districts. The yellow are the industrial districts. So the yellow is what we're changing. And then the lavender, that is the Genesee Valley Regional Market. That is the property owned by the market and used by the market. So those parcels are essentially immune to our, or outside our zoning laws. So technically cannabis could be there if they got permission from the regional market. There are additional parcels that the market owns, but leases for conventional use. So if they're leasing it for conventional use instead of using it for the market use, the conventional use does come under our zoning jurisdiction. In fact, there's property on both sides of Jefferson Road that fall into that later category, and you have, you know, restaurants and hotels. And obviously a hotel is not an agricultural market use, but they're allowed to lease their land. It just, again, when it's not for the market use, it falls under our jurisdiction. When it's market use, it falls under their jurisdiction. So, excuse me, those are the areas within town where cannabis retail could be located. We chose these locations because they're away from houses. Plain and simple. So. Any questions, comments?
Do we know what's going on with the medical marijuana place? I drive by there, it doesn't look like they're doing anything.
They needed to get permission from the Office of Cannabis Management to relocate their medical license. That
Yeah.
It's the state.
it's
It's New York
it's
State.
even worse than just it's the state.
I was just curious because I drive by there and I'm.
No, they are, I know the last time I spoke to them, they sounded quite frustrated. You know, just as we're frustrated in that the rules, you know, we've got these shops that are showing up and essentially flaunting the cannabis laws, and the Office of Cannabis Management isn't doing anything about it.
Yeah, we've had multiple conversations about
Yeah,
those.
so they did come to town. I did give them the list of all the places that have been reported to me as having sold. I made very clear which I had confirmed reports, including from the sheriff's department, and which were just rumors, which were reports from firsthand witnesses and which were reports from second or greater hand witness. So sometimes it's, you know, someone will come in and say, a friend of mine said that they talked to somebody who saw them sell, right? Versus I had someone come in and say, I saw them selling pot at this store. So I gave all that information to the Office of Cannabis Management. In theory, they were going to do something about it. I will be pleasantly surprised if something happens. I did reach out to our district attorney last year to go after the one shop that we had a confirmed case where they were selling cannabis to minors. The district attorney has pretty much stopped prosecuting cannabis violations. I said to her, this is not a possession issue. This is selling to minors. If this were a liquor store, and I know all my board members feel this way, if this were a liquor store selling alcohol to minors, they'd be all over it. They'd lose their liquor license. There'd probably be some people behind bars. For whatever reason, the state is not going after.
It's just crazy.
It makes no sense to us. It's frustrating as all get out.
I would think that there should be a difference too between an exchange between neighbors and a business that is distributing out of their business.
I agree. I absolutely agree. But especially when it goes to minors, because whereas there's been a lot of medical evidence that recreational cannabis use, unless it's abused like anything else, is not harmful to adults, there is also plenty of evidence that it is harmful to the developing brain. And so just as with alcohol, there's a reason why there is an age limit with regards to those substances. So very frustrated by that. Any other questions, comments? Then hearing none, I am going to close the public hearing for the proposed local law to amend the Henrietta zoning code to allow adult use cannabis retail dispensaries in the commercial industrial corridor of the industrial I district. Can I get my second resolution?
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 2-50/2023. Authorize the bills payable. I did it
Second.
first. Okay.
Sorry,
Yeah, no, no problem.
seconded.
What were you going to say, Rick?
Nope.
He didn't let him finish. It was like, I'm done.
Any comments, questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 2-51, 2023. It's called for a public hearing for a proposed law to update the town code relative to provisions of the town of Henrietta local energy code, including NISTRETCH.
Second. So as I've mentioned to the town board, the town was caught in a battle between two state agencies, the Department of State and what's effectively the Department of Energy, which is NYSERDA, New York State Environmental Research and Development Agency, over control of building codes, energy codes, et cetera, and so forth. The result of it all is that there are portions of the New York Stretch model law, which we adopted, which basically the Department of State says, sorry, you can't control that. So we have modified the code to exempt those portions so that we meet Department of State requirements. We could have abolished the previous code and adopted the new, but I was afraid from a timing standpoint, I didn't want there to be confusion with the developers. So I preferred that we just modify the existing law to exempt out the portions we had to exempt. There were two additional points of clarification that the Department of State wanted. They only really concerned about them going to the Department of State. But my thought on that was, if there was confusion by the Department of State, there's potentially confusion by the builders. So I asked Don to incorporate those points of clarification into the code itself. So a builder reading the code knows. And what it basically comes down to is there's requirements for light dimming. It does not apply to emergency access lighting. So if there is, light showing the way to exit a building or to light up the exit path after you get out of the building, those are exempted from the New York Stretch requirements that at night the lights dim so it's not so bright. That's basically the clarification. So again, it made sense to me to make sure that the builders were aware of that. I didn't want them to put in something and then find out, oh, sorry, your building doesn't meet code because you dimmed the emergency access lights as well. Any questions on that? So again, this is just calling for the public hearing. That's what that's about. Hearing no further comments, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page.
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. And I'll thank Rick Page for the look that reminded me that I should probably call for the roll because I was all ready to move on.
I read your mind.
Yeah. That was a long public hearing. Fellow board members, I have resolution 2-52, 2023 to approve an amendment to a lease agreement with Dish Wireless for vacant space on the town telecommunications tower at 475 Calkins Road so as to begin commencement by January 1st, 2023 and to confirm location of utilities.
Second.
So basically the first payment would be due on January 1st, which is already passed, but basically they'll have the check available for us upon closing. So,
And this is now that it's leased, are we going to be looking into finalizing the sale?
correct. So basically, once we have that and the check in hand and it's fully active, fully, well, I had a loss for words. Executed. That's the word I was looking for. When this is fully executed, then we will go back to the people who won the bid, see if they're still interested. If not, then we'll have to make a decision. I'll discuss with the attorney for the town as to whether we can just go to the second person on the bid or whether we should go back out to a bid. We'll first find out what our legal options are. Because obviously if we have to go back out to bid, then we're done. If we have a choice, then we'll come back to the town board and decide which way we want to do that. But yes, that is the plan. The reason we weren't able to move forward is because that sale was contingent upon having this payment in place. And the problem was their old agreement, they weren't required to start making payments until they put their equipment on the tower. Yet they were essentially holding that space and we couldn't lease it to anybody else. So it was not the best situation. So Deputy Town Supervisor Craig Eckert, the town attorney Don Young, and others worked on getting this corrected, and was very happy. In fact, it was so much so when they first said the date as to when the payments were going to start, I asked did they get the wrong year. But Don and Craig impressed upon them enough what our issues were, and they were willing to resolve it for us. So very happy with that.
Great.
Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner.
Aye.
I'm sorry.
Aye.
Oh,
Sorry.
thank you. Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 2-53, 2023 to award the Henrietta Town Court Site Demolition Package Contract A to Bayside Paving Contractors.
Seconded.
So the good news is on all three of these, the prices came in below what our escalated budget was. So we'd had an original budget when we were first planning this idea. And then once we got far enough to actually put the bids out, we essentially adjusted for inflation. And the good news is these are they're above the original numbers prior to inflation, but they're below the adjusted numbers. So that's good news. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I just woke up. No, I'm sorry. I have resolution number 2-54, 2023 to award the Henrietta Town Court Foundation Package Contract B to D Agostino General Contractors.
Second.
So again, same comments as last time.
Good.
Any further comment? I will note that DiAgostino has done work for us on previous buildings. So we're very familiar with them. Hearing no further comments, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 2-55/2023 to accept the low bid New Henrietta Town Court Structural Steel Package Contract C, Raymar Steel Sales Incorporated.
Seconded.
So again, same comments as before, including the Raymar has done work for us in the past. So we're familiar with them. So I, for one, am very happy with the first three contracts that go out. I've been having discussions. We had a bunch of discussions with the architects today, and based off of the nature of the questions, we're now into the FF&E, which is furniture, finishings, and everything else. I don't know what the E stands for. But that basically means we're getting near the end. So hopefully we should have, I'm trying to ask them to get the rest of the drawings done, so that we'll be able to, by the end of the month, so that we'll be able to go out in February for the other components, because we can get out before everybody else goes out for bid. It improves our chances of getting lower bids. So that's where we sit. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. I was just notified that the E stands for equipment. Thank you, Linda.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 2-56, 2023, to authorize the supervisor to execute professional services agreements with CME Associates Incorporated for structural materials testing and special inspection services for the new town court.
Second. So CME has also done a lot of this work for us in the past, professional service. It's basically to make sure that when they're putting in the foundation, when they're putting in the base for the foundations and the floor and the parking lot, that it's compacted well enough so that you don't end up with future sinkage. Any questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page.
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 2-57, 2023 to authorizing monitoring of hazardous material removal at the old library.
Second.
So after the sale, the auction is complete. They'll start removing some of the, there's only a couple areas where there's hazardous material. That's actually being done by the contractor doing the site demolition. But by law, we have to have somebody monitoring the air quality to make sure it's not creating a hazard for those employees there. And that's what, excuse me, that's what Labella is doing. Any questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 2-58, 2023 to award the 2022 Middle Road Water Main Extension Project bid to Nardozzi Paving and Construction LLC.
Seconded.
So for those you remember, Nardozzi is the company that did the Castle Road culvert replacement. They've also recently done the water main along East River Road. So they've got a lot
This
of
was the
experience.
good group that did the culvert.
Yes, this was the group that actually did the work. Yeah,
Okay.
so what Councilmember Safranik is referring to is the people who won low bid never moved forward, never ordered the stuff. We essentially rescinded the bid. I don't even think they ever signed their contract to get started. I don't remember all the details, but basically we rescinded it. Nardozzi was the second lowest bid, so we awarded it to them. They're the ones who actually completed the project.
Okay.
And they did so in an expedited manner, because if you remember, there was a washout of the
Yeah.
culvert.
Weird
We
issues.
suddenly had to close the road. We were trying to get it done as soon as possible, including they did it beginning and through the winter season. So they put in a lot of effort. They do good work. I'll leave it at that. Any further questions, comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 2-59-2023 to accept the dedication of roadways for the preserve subdivision section 10.
Second.
For those unaware, section 10 is that last area to be built. If you basically hit York Bay Trail and turn left or east, it's that little cul-de-sac there. That's section 10. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow board members, I have resolution number 2-60/2023. This is to call for a public hearing for the proposed modification of extension number 109 to Henrietta Water District number 1, which is Middle Road.
Seconded.
So as it basically says, we're looking to narrow it down. A lot of the construction main was not, in fact, I actually think none of the improvements were ever put in. I'm gonna have the school confirm that, but certainly there's nothing along where those properties were, so they were not able to get water. We're doing the new water main. They will be able to get water. But just like everybody else who's getting water from that project, they're expected to pay their fair share of the debt service. And so they'll ultimately, those three subject properties will be in the new 172, but before we can form 172, we have to diminish 109. Any questions on that? I'm hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 2-61-2023 to authorize and or ratify the following agreements executed between December 14th, 2022 and January 18th, 2023.
Second. So we've been creating a policy because there's never been a written policy on how we handle the authorization and or ratification of agreements. So we're going to put something together, probably have it next time to go, but I'll just note that, so for instance, the two transcription ones, part of why we're looking to include those here is because they're that contract covers the entire year, even though it's still below the $10,000 expenditure. We're calling it out here. So we're going to try to craft a whole policy, bring it forth. We'll approve it in February. I don't know whether that'll be at the first meeting or second meeting, depends on how much feedback you guys have. But then the idea is going forward, it will be part of our organizational meeting. There's kind of been a past practice. I want to document past practice. So that's all I'm saying. Any other comments, questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 2-62, 2023 to recommend William R. Santos for reappointment to the Monroe County Environmental Management Council.
Second.
So Bill's been doing a great job for us at the council, and I'd love to see him continue. Any further comment? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 2-63, 2023 to extend the deadline for annual inventories.
Seconded.
So we're going with new inventory tracking software to greatly improve the inventories themselves. We need to give IT time to get it installed, and we need to give department heads time to get familiar with it and to move all the information over. In the past, we were using it separate spreadsheets, which is not the best way to track everything. So any questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 2-64, 2023. Whereas Party City located at 700 Jefferson Road in Henrietta has donated a large variety of excess party supplies, children's prizes, and decorations to the Henrietta Recreation Department. And whereas the supplies are all in good condition but no longer available for sale because the store is undergoing a change from a franchise store to a corporate location. And whereas the Recreation Department can make use of the supplies for various programs and events throughout the year. Therefore, be it resolved that the Henrietta Town Board acknowledges this donation and thanks Party City for their generosity.
Second.
I to thank them, and I will note that we've actually already made use of some of the supplies. They were used during the Martin Luther King Day celebration. After the event, there was a small gathering with party foods, for lack of a better way to describe it. So we used the plates from Party City, saving the town taxpayers money. Any further comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 2-65/2023 to declare items surplus material from the Recreation Department.
Seconded.
So I did, I shouldn't say I did. Pam Grunman, the Director of Parks and Recreation, did confirm that the storage cabinet was moved over there prior to when the auctioneers were doing the photographing and inventory, so it should be up on the site. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 2-66, 2023 to make appropriate budget transfers.
Second. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 2-67, 2023 to hire personnel, make the attached changes, and approve the July through December 2022 attendance incentive.
Second.
The description says everything about it. Any further comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 2-68, 2023 to authorize the purchase and installation of a standby generator for the senior center.
Seconded.
So if you remember at last night's meeting, Councilmember Page raised a question about the maintenance and service, the
Extended warranty.
an extended warranty. He was actually reading off of the numbers in this, the second bid, the second lowest bid. So our Commissioner of Public Works, Mike Catalano, reached out to the people on the lowest bid. They actually threw in a 10-year extended warranty at no additional cost.
Nice.
And then you'll notice they included then what the price is for maintenance. I added that as a further resolve because we don't have to go with them. We can. But I just wanted to make it clear that if we do elect to go to them, that's additional above the 14,800 is the only reason I had it as a further clause, because it's to the same vendor. I just wanted to make it clear that the not to exceed the 14,800 does not include that annual maintenance servicing, because we don't have to go with them. We may decide to, we may not, but I just wanted to make that clear in case someone comes back later and says, oh, well, you actually spent. And I will note that if you add the 14,800 and the 468, it is still even together is lower than the other one. Although even though the other quote, I don't believe those were listed as optional. So I don't know that they were included in the total price, but even if they were, this is still lower. So. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 2-69, 2023 to issue a negative declaration and adopt local law number 1 of 2023 to allow adult use cannabis retail dispensaries in limited portions of the industrial district.
Are you seconding?
Oh, I'm sorry. Second.
He was looking at me like I'm supposed to.
I was thinking, I was going to ask if there was any negative comments that came back out of the seeker,
None.
and then I forgot to second it. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I've not received any comments about this whatsoever. I think, like I said, people see it as the same thing as the commercial that it makes sense in those areas. Again, we did have one application under the commercial one at the former IHOP location. In that case, they didn't need a special use permit to go in there as medical, but they would need one if they eventually went to retail. That's their plan. So that's what they put in. As was noted earlier, they're waiting for approval to relocate their medical license facility from its current location, which I think is on University or.
Yeah, University.
Yeah, I think it's University, to this location. So. That's it. Any further questions or comments? And hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
That concludes our resolutions. Do we have any public comments, discussion? Hearing none, do we have committee or miscellaneous reports from the board?
I have nothing. True. Yeah, as Adrian said, this is their kind of their quiet time. So everything is going great. Go visit the library. And thank you to everybody for what they do. That's all I got.
I attended the fire commissioners meeting and the MLK celebration, and that's about it.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that the MLK celebration, that's the largest attendance I've seen in quite some time.
Yeah.
And now some of that was due to the pandemic, but even pre-pandemic, that was
Nice.
really well attended.
It was a really nice ceremony.
Yeah.
It was very, very nice.
The keynote speaker was really great too. She
was.
did a great job, and I love her comment that she wishes her realtor had told her about Henrietta when she was looking for a new
Yeah.
home.
She obviously had the wrong realtor. Right.
That's right.
Oh, and Lisa and I attended the Tinker.
So Joe was there too.
What? And Joe
Joe.
and his wife.
To the Tinker thing, the Tinker appreciation dinner was wonderful. Food was great. It was
Yeah,
very,
Joe
very
always
nice
shows
too.
up when the food's there.
I was originally intending to go, but my brother
We heard
Made a
you had
surprise visit. Yeah.
uninvited guest.
Yeah, it was great. So,
Rick was kind enough to give a little speech.
Yeah. Those people put in so much work there.
It's
just
amazing.
Amazing.
They're good. They're all, they all love it. And
They're into it.
I just, the volunteerism in this community, I'm sorry, I don't think any other community is as lucky as we are. I mean, they just love it. They're just, and Emily and Tim are amazing. I mean, everything that they do there too is just incredible. What a great, we're so fortunate to have that.
Yeah, I got a chance to reflect with Tim about it when we were up there. I was a seasonal employee in the 90s when Tinker was in the entire process. We got nostalgic about, insulation and roofs and stuff like that and put it in bathrooms. But just watching the evolution of that in the last 25 years has been remarkable. And I know Tim made the comment, and I want to share it with everybody, that when people come and talk to him about it, they're like, we can't believe this is a town park. Like, this is something that counties or states actually do. We can't believe that a town actually does this. And Rick referred to it as really the crown jewel. It's such a fantastic treasure to this town.
It really is. And you see how it is able to be what it is just by all of those people that volunteer, whether it be working in the home or working in the gardens or whatever they're doing. I mean, they just love it. They're just so excited about it. It's amazing. It's just wonderful.
All right, so I'll jump in. At Breeze Park, working on the necessary paperwork to be eligible for the remaining SAM grant funds for the restrooms. At Chapman's Corners, they have received quotes for the swings and the slide, and they're evaluating them right now. We just a couple of minutes ago approved Jordan Turner to be formally appointed as the rec leader. Gymnastics is hosting an event on February 18th and 19th. Flag football is starting on January 28th. They're excited about that. A lot of conversation about holiday lights and magic, a lot of reflections, and it was an embarrassment of riches. Too many people showed up. They talked a lot about traffic flow and procedure for next year, but what a great statement that is.
They did a great job managing the unexpected attendance.
Yeah, just remarkable stuff. Upcoming for them, teen night on January 28th, 6:30 to 8:30 at the rec center. Cupcake and Cupid's Valentine's Dance, February 11th. And clock is kind of ticking right now. The Henrietta Youth Hall of Fame Awards nomination deadline is this Friday, January 20th. So working from the inside of the town, at the school district, I've seen 21 applicants so far that have been nominated internally inside the school district. Obviously 26 spots are what we're trying to fill. So if you got any names on your mind, still got a couple days to do that.
I will add that on Monday, I signed the closing documents for the park for Chapman's Corners.
And we just got an email. Did you see the email? We
I
just
did.
got that it's closed.
And I used my Janet Howlett pen to sign the documents.
That's exciting.
Those who don't know, Janet is our marriage officer and used to work in the clerk's office. Speaking of the clerk's office, I continue to get just amazing raves about there. We had an individual who stopped in, and that's all he wanted to talk about was how wonderful our town clerks are. And the responsiveness, what he was beating his head against the wall with the county, he came here and like a few minutes later had what he was looking for. So he's just could not stop gushing about the clerks. So again, hats off to Becky and her entire team. They do an amazing job, and we're so fortunate to have them here in town. Anything else? Then hearing none, we are going to adjourn, but we will be adjourning to executive session for matters regarding the employment of a particular person. And we will be adjourning directly from executive session. We will not be returning from normal session. So I will make a motion that we move to executive session.
Second.
Any objection? Hearing none, meeting adjourned to executive session.